So when I started wheeling, I had a Jeep on 37s right away pretty much. And I just get to the trailhead, find a pebble or rock nearby, air down with it, go wheeling all day, find a gas station somewhere nearby, air up, go home, and do it all over again the next weekend. And I did that for years, to be honest with you. So my point is, you don't really need all these fancy gadgets to get out and have fun on the trail. They're just a convenience. But if you want some convenience, I'm pretty sure you're going to see a couple of things here that you have not seen, as they're all DIY projects that I find super useful. So I'm not going to tell you what tire pressure to run, what wheel tire combination to run. There's plenty of great YouTube videos out there that'll get you all the pertinent information you need. I will say that I often see people, going on street PSI, on fire roads, sandy roads, whatever, and the second I convince them to finally air down, they feel like they find heaven. So I do recommend airing down to something. If we are going to be talking about all these gadgets, the first question is, what do you need them for? A lot of people seem to focus on speed. However, there's a good chance you're going to be wheeling with other people, and somebody's going to have the Harbor Freight air compressor, somebody's going to have a rock or a twig to air down with, and you're going to be waiting on them anyways. For me, it's about convenience. I want to be able to plug my system in, walk away, take care of my kids, do whatever I got to do, prep for the trail, prep for the ride home, and then when I'm ready, I come back, I just unplug it, it's all automated, and I'm done. That's really what is the most important thing to me. So the first thing is, we're going to get into all the options for decompressing. Then we'll get into all the options for compressing and how you should choose a compressor, things that really aren't mentioned too much on YouTube. And then I'll kind of show you some modifications that I did and how my system works, which I think is pretty unique and is, honestly, for me at least, the most convenient that I could think of. So the second cheapest option, other than a twig or stick, is going to be a tool that'll pull your valve stem for you. You go to AutoZone and get something for $2 or $3, or Curry makes something that's not that expensive that lets you pull it out. It looks kind of fancy, but it really does the same thing. And the reason why I don't recommend that is several reasons. First of all, it's pretty easy to lose your valve stem or mess up the threading or have some other issue go bad that will ruin your whole day. And the other thing is, if you're on 35-inch tires, for example, at 35 PSI and you're trying to get to 18, it's very difficult to gauge the speed that it takes to get to 18 PSI, and you can't monitor it. It goes very, very fast. So chances are you're going to be going below your desired PSI and then pulling out your air compressor and pumping your tires back up. So that's really something I don't recommend unless you're on 40s and you're trying to get to 5 PSI very fast. So the next option you have is something like this. This is a Staun deflator. There's other companies that make them as well. For example, Coyote, I believe, makes one. And they're pretty simple mechanisms. It's basically a spring that, based on the tire pressure you set, opens the seal and then shuts the seal if the tire pressure goes too low. There's good and bad about this. The good is, if you set it correctly, you plug it into your valves and you could drive as it's deflating, which is a great option, meaning that you don't have to sit around and wait to deflate your tires. So that only really works if you're doing a lot of solo stuff and you're trying to go, from 35 to 18 and you don't have time to wait 5 minutes or 3 minutes. So the bad about this, and I've used these things for over 13 years on and off, and the bad about this is a couple of things. The first thing is going to be the adjustment. It's a screw. So when you screw this, it's very easy to accidentally bump it and you mess up your PSI. So if you set it to 18, you pull it out of your pocket, you put it in, you think you're at 18, but you're really at 10, and now you got to pull out your compressor. The other bad thing about this is, I find that it doesn't always stop when you want it to stop. So if you set it to 18 PSI, it might stop at 16 PSI or 15 PSI. That's pretty common. You're usually going to be within 2 or 3 PSI. Not the end of the world. I've seen it go below 2. And the reason why is because of gravity. So if you set it up and you put it in your valve stem like this, it's usually going to be accurate within 1 PSI or 2 at the most. However, if your valve stem is up top and then this little button here that has to seal everything, this could actually let it go down, an extra 4 or 5 PSI more than your settings. I've had that experience. So they're not super reliable. unless you do some modifications to them, which we'll discuss later. But this is the next option. So then you have something called monster deflators. There's a couple of companies that make them. The ones on my Jeep are made by Power Tank. You have to drill your rim and put in a secondary type of valve in there that is larger, and it will let you go down from, I think, 40 psi, go down to like 4 psi in definitely under a minute, which is extremely, extremely fast. The downside is A, you have to drill your rim. B, it's kind of same thing as we discussed when you pull your valve stem. It's a little bit hard to control your airflow, so it doesn't really make sense unless you're trying to drop 30 or 40 psi fast. Meaning if you're on 35s and you're trying to go down to 18 or 15, it doesn't make sense in any way, especially the fact that you have to modify your rims. So that's only something for very large tires that likes to go down to a rock crawling psi, such as 5 or so. So then you have your four-way systems, which are these guys. It's basically a hose that comes out of each end over here, a gauge, an inflator, deflator, and these turn into 4 hoses, which lets you plug basically air up or air down all 4 tires at the same time. This is great because it's a dual system, airs up and airs down for you. And these are becoming the most popular for good reason. And you really have an option like this, or you have an option that you install completely inside your vehicle, and then you just have little plugs that'll come out for each tire. There's pros and cons to both, and we'll discuss that a little bit later. As this is my air up and air down system, and this is the system that I did a lot of hacks on, we'll discuss that closer to the end of the video as well. I will say that there's plenty of companies that make these, and it's hard to judge which one is great, which one isn't. This is more flat. This is Mid-Atlantic off-road. They do have different plugs at the end for your valve. This is automatic. This has a handle. Depends on what you want out of them. There's more flats. Gauge sucks, from my experience at least. It's never been accurate. I played around with it a lot. I was never able to get it to be accurate. So I ended up getting a Power Tank gauge and putting it on. I've always found Power Tank to be the most accurate gauges from my experience. The one that came with Mid-Atlantic off-road, it's pretty accurate. So can't complain about it. Let's get into airing up, and then we'll come back to this. Airing up, you really have 2 options. It's CO2 or a compressor. With CO2, you could air up much, much faster, and that's the upside. You could also use air tools. The downside is it takes up more space. It is very costly to get into right away, but not as costly as this ARB, for example, probably. But the real other downside is you need to constantly find a place to refill your CO2. So because of that reason, I never actually bothered with CO2. I don't want to be running around trying to find places to refill it, even though I got 40s. I personally don't mind filling up to 20, 25 psi and then going to find a gas station and filling up with the rest. But in reality, she's been a trailer queen for a few years now. So let's talk compressors. If you really want to understand how compressors work and how airflow works in general, there's a great YouTube video by Dirt Lifestyle called Onboard Air. I'll leave a link to it below. But let's just kind of cover the most important factors when you're choosing a compressor. It's really going to be CFM and duty cycle, and that's it. So what that means, and reliability, which we'll get into in a second. What CFM means is cubic feet per minute. So how much air is it pumping out at a certain rate? That's probably your most important thing right there. I have a little spreadsheet here. On the sheet you could see prices too for comparison. So just because you're buying the best air compressor in the world, which is, quote unquote, for overlanding, the ARB twin, doesn't mean you're getting the best bang for your buck as far as CFM is concerned. So the only other factor that's important is duty cycle. And that basically means how long it could run for, and then usually how long it needs to break for. And it could either be in minutes or percentages. Usually the percentages are percentages of 1 hour. So for example, an ARB single has a 50% duty cycle. That means it could run for 30 minutes and then it needs a 30-minute break. Their twin has a 100% duty cycle, so supposedly it can run forever. Other ones you'll see have a 33% duty cycle. That means they can run for 20 minutes and then they need a 20-minute break. This Home Depot one that I bought yesterday for a testing purpose that I'll show you later has a 10-minute duty cycle, so it'll run for 10 minutes and it'll give you you need a 10-minute break. Most of the compressors here, other than the Home Depot, have a decent amount of CFM pressure that they'll give you enough air in 20 minutes to go from, 16 psi to 32 or 34 psi, hopefully for all 4 tires, before they need to shut down. So really, at minimum, you should be looking at something that could run for 20 minutes, preferably 30 minutes, and something that'll have, at least 2 to 3 CFM, to be honest with you. And then it's reliability. So reliability doesn't mean an A or B is going to outperform something else, the Smitty built, because it's more expensive. Reliability also needs to account for how long you're gonna, get it close to overheating or go above the duty cycle. So it's dependent on how much air you're using. For example, if you literally take 2 Smitty built compressors, put them in a tank, connect them to a tank, which was done on Dirt Lifestyle, you're gonna get double the power of an A or B twin, or almost double the power. And chances are you're going to get a decent amount of reliability because you're not going to be running them for 40 minutes straight. You're going to run them probably for 10 or 15 minutes at the most to air up your tires with that amount of CFM. They're not going to overheat, so they're probably going to be reliable enough in the long run. Plus, you have 2, so if you drop one, then you still have 1 running for you. So what do I recommend? If you want a DIY system, I'd kind of think about using 2 compressors, putting it in a tank. I think it's a great idea. Plan to do it here. But if you want a plug-and-play system, I'll recommend A or B. And that's what I've been using for years. I have a 400 on 34-inch tires, has a single. I just put 35-inch tires on another 400, and it's getting this compressor. Just because I feel like if you have 35 or above, you really, at that point, you need to step up to a dual compressor. I haven't tested Smitty built, so I can't tell you if they're great or not, to be honest with you. I just know that A or B has yet to let me down. And before, I used to use cheap compressors, Harbor Freight, Amazon, whatever. At most, I get 10 trips out of those compressors, and then they're trash because of their duty cycle. I was constantly overheating them. So now that you have your compressors, let's put it all together. You only have really 3 options that I could think of to air up your tires. Single hose like this. A lot of times it'll come with your compressor. Plug it in each tire, monitor your gauge, fill up. It's the most time-consuming method because you're always standing next to your hose and monitoring everything running around per tire. I will mention that in any system, if you're monitoring your air pressure gauge, it's not going to be accurate unless you turn off your compressor. Otherwise, it's going to show you inaccurate numbers. So every time you want to get accurate readings, shut off the compressor, check the readings, and keep going. The next system that you have, which I don't have here, but functionality-wise, it's going to be very similar to this, and we'll discuss this in a second, or you can make it very similar to this. But it's an onboard system completely. And what that does is, instead of carrying a bunch of wires in a big mess like this, you have everything running inside your vehicle to chucks, to little plugs under your fenders, and then you're carrying only hoses this big, 4 hoses, plug it into a chuck, plug it into a tire, and let it all run at the same time. That's the big benefit there. The reason why I prefer this system over that system is because this is portable. I could transfer this to multiple vehicles. I could help my buddies air up with this. It's not as easy to do with that system. Plus, I could use this as different sources of emergency air if I need to get air somewhere else. That's a little bit of a distance away. Unless with that system you're going to be carrying the same big 4 wires, but then it kind of defeats the purpose. But again, if you only have 1 vehicle, that might be the way to go. 1 off-road vehicle, that might be the way to go. As far as recommendations for Jeeps, I'd recommend getting it from Dominion Off-Road. For Toyota guys, sponsored by Wifey on Instagram or something, he has a really nice system. These systems aren't going to be much more expensive to buy versus build, so it's up to you if you want to go start sourcing parts. Same thing for this. I mean, these systems aren't much more expensive, and the reason why I buy them is because building them yourself, it could be a fun and great and easy project, but you're not really saving that much money, to be honest with you. So that's up to you if you want to build them or not. Certain things we'll discuss you have to build yourself in a second. So like I said, this is why I like to use this specific system. It's because it's just the portability of it. Due to the length of the video, I ended up making 2 parts. The first part is going to be your educational video that you just watched, and now the second part is going to be your DIY instructional stuff for the auto shutoff for inflation and deflation, basically what I use. So please click the link below and watch the second part.